One of the best things that we can do as an angler is learn how to eliminate water quickly. That will truly help you to go out to any body of water that you fish, whether it's one that you fish often or a new body of water, and start catching fish. And so in today's video, I want to give you a simple tip. It's something that you may have heard, but I just want to kind of pontificate about it for a minute because it is that important, and you can apply it to a number of different bodies that you fish, bodies of water that you fish, whether that's a pond or a big lake or a river. So real quick before we get into the video, I just got a number of new colors of my bass hats in stock. So if you guys want to click that link down below for the bass hat, you can check out those colors, you can pick them up, and it will greatly help support this channel. All right, a number of years ago, I was fishing a tournament down in Florida on Lake Toho. And I had fished Florida for a number of years, and so I knew a little bit about Lake Toho. And when I got to this body of water, I knew that I wanted to fish off the bank. I wanted to fish kind of offshore in this particular tournament. And what I did is I simply used my eyes under the water, which were my hummingbird units. And what I'm going to talk to you today, you can still use this exact same principle whether you have, electronics or not, because I use this exact same thing and do this exact same thing when I'm fishing in shallow water with my eyes. But to get the point across, when I was fishing this tournament, I wanted to fish offshore, and the entire south end of Lake Toho during this tournament was pretty much nothing but grass. As a matter of fact, when you get to Florida, it's pretty much nothing but grass. I mean, the entire lakes are typically surrounded by grass, and there's grass all out throughout the middle of the lake. And it can be extremely overwhelming because there's just so much fishable water. But the best thing that you can do, like I talked about, is eliminate water. And the best thing that you can do to eliminate water is look for irregularities. That is the main concept, the main principle of this video. I'm going to talk about a few different examples that you can do, whether you're fishing like I was in this tournament offshore, or if you're fishing a bank, or if you're fishing the pond, whatever it may be. And so in this tournament, I idled for a long, long time. And I idled all over these grass flats before I ever took a cast, before I ever made a cast. And the biggest thing that I was doing was marking things that were very irregular to me, something that was just completely different. And along the ways, I marked a number of different objects, but two of the things that produced the most for me in the tournament in the following days were two isolated patches of grass. These were two pieces of grass that were far removed from the main area where there was a ton of grass, and there was one hole in the grass. And that hole in the grass was, it was probably about 20 foot by 30 foot in diameter. And it was in the middle of this huge grass area. And it was just this random hole. And the bottom there, I could tell, was harder. I don't know if I'm guessing it was shell down there that I was feeling. But honestly, there even looked like there was some rock. But I don't know if that happens in Lake Toho. Maybe if you're from around there, you could tell me whether there's rock piles on Toho. But for sure, definitely some shell. But anyways, those two areas, those irregularities, or those three areas, the two isolated patches and the one hole, ended up being where I caught a ton of fish. And I caught some really big fish during that tournament in those areas. And I know for a fact that the only reason that I knew to kind of do that was because I had fished down there for a number of years, and I had been fishing for a number of years. When you get into those situations where you have a ton of cover to fish, that is the best thing that you can do, is stop and just look around until you find something that is irregular. Now, like I said, it doesn't have to be just offshore grass fishing. This can be any type of fishing that you do. And I can remember going down to Lake Norman in North Carolina, and very same concept, extremely overwhelmed by the number of boat docks that are in this lake. I mean, there are boat docks upon boat docks upon boat docks, just completely surrounding this body of water. And I did something that was very, very similar. And that is when I would pull in to a creek arm, I would just look at the boat dock that was different. And a lot of times what this ended up being in this particular tournament that I fish is it was the boat dock that was closest to the shoreline. A lot of the boat docks on that lake will have a walkway that come really far out, and then you have the main dock, and they're all over the lake like that. Well, I found, and it was a really weird pattern, but it was something that every dock that you would see that was really close to the shoreline was the ones that held the bass. And in particularly, they held more largemouth in this tournament. And in this tournament, I was wanting to focus on largemouth because they were just bigger. And so I found that all these docks where the main dock was closest to the bank was where I would catch those largemouth. And I think the reason was because the bass were just starting to move shallow and they were wanting to spawn. And so I think that those shallow water docks were like the last place that those fish, those largemouth, would move to before they actually went to the bank to spawn. And that's what I think was the reason, but I don't know. But that's just something I noticed, and I was able to run all over the lake, fish those shallow water, those boat docks that were close to the bank, and catch largemouth. And so there are a number of different things over the course of my fishing that have been exactly like this. I've seen it where you'll look at a riprap bank. You may fish a lake that has riprap all over the place. But if you can find these little irregularities within the riprap, maybe it's a small little point, maybe it's where the riprap ends, maybe you have two different style of riprap banks that kind of meet, where it's more chunk rock and bigger rock, that transition is where they are. So no matter where you are fishing, this is something that I always suggest that people do, is instead of just picking up a rod and start fishing, look with your own eyes, if you're fishing visible cover, at things that are different. Or look with your eyes under the water, for me it's my hummingbird units, at things that are different. And spend some time doing that before you even make a cast, because you will start to see those irregularities. And then once you start catching fish and you see the irregularities and you match them, that is when something really special happens in fishing, and it becomes really easy to catch fish. And it's something that when you figure it out, it's awesome. I relate it often, and I've made this same analogy on the channel as a quarterback, where a quarterback starts to see the field and things start to slow down and they start to make the right throws. That's the exact same thing that happens in bass fishing. When you start to get those clues and you put them together, things start to slow down. You start to know exactly what to look for. So guys, I hope that this helps you out there on the water. Look for those irregularities. And don't forget to check out those bass hats, and I'll see you tomorrow.